Good evening. It's Tuesday, January the 19th, a little after 8 p.m., and I'm going to do a winter weather update for my good friend Chad Carson in Indian Land, South Carolina. He's just south of the North Carolina border below Charlotte. And let's talk about the weather and what's going to be happening later this week as we see a major winter storm develop along the mid-Atlantic states. So the first thing we have out here to the west is a mid-level impulse of some wintry mix, and we have high pressure here that's drawing a little bit of warmth up into this batch of freezing precipitation and snow, and that's giving it just enough of a southerly flow to get that freezing precip and mix to the south part of it. So as time goes on, this is going to push across the Tennessee Valley and probably get right up into this area of western North Carolina and over into Georgia and Alabama area, where we'll see some mix, and we probably won't see very much accumulation of that, or if any at all, if it makes it that far. It could dry out by the time it gets to the Appalachians, but there are some winter storm watches in effect for this area right now. As time goes on, this may set up the atmosphere for a cooling mechanism as this large area of moisture drops down from the northwest United States and makes a connection with the Gulf. We're also going to see the jet stream take a real deep dive into the central United States, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. But there's a lot of factors setting up this winter storm, even though we're not seeing the actual low pressure yet. The low pressure is going to develop somewhere in here, and it's going to swing right across South Carolina and up over Virginia and the Delmarva area. It's going to be pretty close. The more southerly the track, the more of a northerly wind with colder air and mix and snow we're going to get into this area. So it depends on how southerly that track goes for the low pressure. The more south it goes, the more of a snow effect you're going to get. Whereas if it goes more over you, you're probably going to have more of a wintry mix with some sleet and snow mixed in. Maybe start out as freezing rain and then switch over. So let's look at the GRE on radar. Here's what we're looking at right now as far as the eastern half of the United States. Here's that impulse with some of that freezing precipitation. You can see the connection it's making to the Gulf of Mexico right now, and if it does, if it adds enough moisture to it, we may see that moisture spread into, like I said, these areas here for some of that mixed freezing precipitation, but it'll be very light, if anything, before it dries out for hitting or reaching the coastline. So let's take a look at the western United States, and we're still looking at the water vapor imagery, and here's the setup. Here's where all this is going to be coming from. So all this activity coming down into the United States, a large area of moisture and mass coming from the Pacific. The North Pacific jet actually is diving this down to the central United States, or heading across the western portion right now. That's going to be the setup for the low pressure. So let's take a look at the jet stream. And here's our jet stream run. Right now, here we are. We have a little bit of a dip, and you can see that moisture is diving down across Colorado down into the Utah area. And as we go on in time, we see the jet stream start to splinter a little bit out west, but then we get a real big setup for that polar dip down into the central United States. And you can see how drastic this jet stream is dipping straight down. We call this an omega block in meteorology, when we have low here, and we have low here, and then we have a high pressure ridge here, and this jet stream is really just diving this Arctic air straight down. And what that's going to do is create that low pressure right here in the pocket, and that low is going to travel right along, get caught up on the subtropical jet, and blow up right here off the coast of Virginia. And that's why we're expecting such a high amount of snow to swath this area, where some of the models are calling for 3 feet or more, and winds up to possible hurricane gusts. And that just depends on how deep the low gets. If it gets down below 950 millibars, we could be looking at heavy gale force winds along those states along the mid-Atlantic coast. All right, so let's take a look at some of the models that we have. Here's the GFS model, and this is for right now. As we go in time, I'm sorry, let me back up to start over from scratch here. Here's hour 6 for right now. As we go in time, I'm just going to hit play and go through each one of these. Here's 18 hours out. Here's that that impulse of that wintry weather trying to make it across the Tennessee Valley and across into South Carolina. You can see how it breaks up when it hits northern Georgia and dries out. So maybe parts of North Carolina, it could spread, maybe drop downslope, topographically speaking, could go downslope and make it halfway across the state along northern North Carolina. It just depends on how much moisture is available up high to spill down. And then as time goes on, that dries out. And here comes our storm right here over near Arkansas. It's actually a little further south on this run than it was the last run. It was developing further north. So here it comes. It's actually making its connection to the Gulf of Mexico a little earlier, and it's going to spread across. Now here's where we get into some of that tricky mix right here, because we have this is all kind of a counterclockwise motion going in this direction. So what it does is it brings a little bit of warm air up underneath it, and that's where you get your mix of sleet and freezing rain. And as time goes on, this low moves over here, and then the winds start to come back around counterclockwise from the north, along with high pressure wedging colder air down from the north down into this, and we should see that start to turn over into snow in time. And you can see that mix, and then here we go, as the low moves off, everything back behind it becomes snow. So even on this is Saturday morning, where we see these snows reaching all the way down even into possibly Columbia. This is a little bit of a stretch for the GFS, but it's just adding a swath of snow to possibly make it down that far. Most of this will be concentrated in Virginia, Delmarva, Pennsylvania, New Jersey area, and some of the stretches further north up to Nantucket. So that's where the low bombs out along the coastline. The lowest pressure they have is 984 millibars for the GFS run, 983, and then it moves off to the northeast as we get into Sunday and Monday. Now here's the Euro model, and let me back this up just a little bit. I was taking a look at this earlier. Here's where it starts. It's going to start right in here over Arkansas. Same thing, it's in agreement with this, and then it's going to come right across and bomb out right over North Carolina. So this solution, the Euro solution, actually brings more of the snow in the mix, even the sleet and snow, or just snow, down, drives it right down into Indian Land, this whole area around Charlotte, and really gives that a good whopping of snow. So we could see a few inches there. If we look at the weather bell models for how much we're going to look, I'm going to start at 0 hours and just sort of work my way across. In time, here comes the precipitation, and this ends on Thursday. And then as we start getting into Friday and Saturday, as time goes on, here's the model building. Let me actually blow this whole thing up a little bit so we can see it better. There we go. Sorry about that. Let me start over here. Okay. So here's how, as we go and time goes on, and you can see the model starting to spread it. Once that first impulse is over with, that's where it stalls in the Appalachians, and then as time goes on, we see that secondary, the major storm system, start to really push into the area and drop lots of snow. So 3 feet plus in some of these areas inland. And then over North Carolina, Indian Land could be looking up to accumulation of 5 to 7 inches. That's what the European model is suggesting for right now. It's nothing definite. These models are only numerical predictions based on some of the material that they have now, but we just don't know yet. It looks like the jet stream will take that really heavy dip into the center of the country. That will spin up the low. Everything will come together for a winter storm. So I think you're going to get some frozen precip. It's just a matter of what kind it's going to be when it starts out, and if it actually converts to snow, and then you get some accumulation on top of it, because you'll definitely have the temperatures in place for some freezing precipitation of some sort. And if we look at Datascope, I did want to look at one thing real quick in the Chesapeake Bay area. Here's Chesapeake Bay from WeatherFlows, one of our stations there, and the models bring this all the way out. Let me move me out of the way on the bottom here. And if we go out in time, I want to show you some of the winds that are expected as we go out into Friday and into Saturday. You can see the GFS and the Wave Watch 3, which pretty much work in tandem, bring the winds up into the upper 40s to near 50 miles an hour. So that means the gusting could reach up near 70 miles an hour. And these are just predictions and model predictions. The Canadian keeps it around 30 miles an hour, but they're expecting the winds to really crank around that low pressure as it goes right off the coastline of Virginia. So that will do it for the winter update for you, Chad. And you guys, good luck up there, and stay warm and stay safe. And I'll talk to you soon.